Hi everyone, welcome to the case studies session on disaster management case studies in the ethics course brought to you by Sunya IAS. A word about the case studies. Case studies form part of section B in GS4 paper of UPSC CSE mains examination. It is for a total of 120 marks for 6 case studies, which means each case study accounts for 20 marks. These are application-oriented questions, they are situational questions, and your traditional way of preparation is not much helpful over here. Instead, you should practice how to approach such questions and build frameworks to write answers then and there. I will be taking you through a lot of case studies in different domains so that you can understand how this is to be done and practice accordingly. You also need to develop a knack of looking at the situations or news items coming in the newspapers on a daily basis and see that if you were responsible to take a decision in a particular situation, how would you react? What would be your options and what would be your response? What are the ethical issues involved in that particular issue? For instance, let's say during the COVID-19 pandemic's second wave, there was a lot of shortage of oxygen cylinders. So, if you were the DM of your district and a few hospitals in your district faced dire shortage of oxygen cylinders and there were a lot of admitted patients, how would you react to the situation? What would you do to help these people, right? So when you read your newspapers, keep in mind these ethical dimensions as well and try to think of scenarios in which questions can be made in the UPSC ethics paper and also how you will tackle those situations. Disaster management case studies will include disasters like natural calamities, for example, floods, droughts, earthquakes, cloudbursts, volcanic eruptions, and all such things, man-made disasters, which could be nuclear disasters, chemical disasters, or it could also be biological disasters, which may or may not be man-made. You all should be aware about the man-made origins of coronavirus, which is controversial actually. However, if it is a natural biological disaster or a man-made biological disaster, it can form a part of the case studies questions. Use the knowledge gained in studying disaster management for GS paper 3 and please do not duplicate any material. So here your domain knowledge will play a significant role in helping you to attempt these questions of case studies. The first case study that we are going to look at today is question number 1 of section B in UPSC CSE mains examination 2019. So the question is that you are heading the rescue operations in an area affected by severe natural calamity. The calamity here is not mentioned. Thousands of people are rendered homeless and deprived of food, drinking water, and other basic amenities. Rescue work has been disrupted by heavy rainfall and damage to supply routes. The local people are seething with anger against the delayed, limited rescue operations. When your team reaches the affected area, the people there heckle and even assault some of the team members. One of your team members is even severely injured. Faced with this crisis, some team member pleads with you to call off the operations, fearing threats to their life. In such trying circumstances, what will be your response? Examine the qualities of a public servant which will be required to manage the situation, right? So here, if you see, you are the head of the rescue operations. The area is affected by severe natural calamity. It has not been mentioned which one it is. Thousands of people are homeless, deprived of the basic needs of food, drinking water. Rescue work is disrupted due to heavy rainfall and damage to supply routes. Local people are angry because the rescue operations are delayed and limited. Finally, when your team reaches a particular area, the people there are assaulting your team members and one of your team members is seriously injured. This leads to some team members fearing for their lives and pleading you to call off the operations. So there are two questions here. In such trying circumstances, what will be your response? So question number one is, tell us what your response is going to be. Question number two is, examine the qualities of a public servant which will be required to manage the situations. So those of you who have seen the first video on how to approach case studies would have seen that I had outlined 6 steps on identifying the stakeholders, the ethical dilemmas and courses of action, and finally coming on to the conclusion. So, however, the question here does not require you to write down any stakeholders or possible courses of action, their merits, demerits, etc. It is a simple, straightforward question, and ethics paper is very time consuming. So you just immediately need to begin by answering these questions. Please don't beat around the bush. There is no space for any introduction over here or summarizing the facts of the case. Please do not do that, because whatever little time that you have in ethics paper, you have to address the questions that have been asked properly, and you don't have time to beat around the bush, right, or add any extra stuff. So this question is of 20 marks. There are 2 subparts, which means that each subpart will account for 10 marks. Try to write at least 10 points each for each of the subparts. So the analysis is that you are the head of rescue operations. The stakeholders here, you do not need to mention this analysis. This is just for your understanding. The stakeholders are I, rescue team members, and the locals. So the situation is that the tempers are flaring. People have lost their homes and livelihoods and do not even have access to bare minimum of food, water, and shelter. Team members are scared for further threat to their life. So part 1 of question 1, what will be your response? So I have outlined certain points which you can go through to understand how to frame your answers. Please see how I have used the keywords over here and how I have tried to uh, respond to the situation in a systematic and organized manner, and try to incorporate this in your answers as well. So first, I'll immediately take my team to a safe location, because unless my team is safe, they will not be able to undertake any rescue operations. And I, being the head of the rescue team, I'm responsible for their safety as well. So I will take them to a safe location and arrange for medical aid for the team member who is seriously injured, and first aid for others, because others have also been heckled and assaulted. Next, I will ensure their safety and calm them down before heading to talk to the locals. So basically, after seeing that they have been attended to and taken care of, I will ensure that they are in a safe location and no other people can come and attack them all over again. And I will try to pacify them before heading to talk to the locals. Thirdly, I'll try to find out an entry point. I'll try to approach people in the local population who can be receptive to what I have to say. So I'll approach the elderly or panchayat members in the area and explain them the whole situation. Next, I will talk to the locals after I have thoroughly explained my position to the panchayat members, and in their presence, with their permission, I will talk to the locals and try to pacify them, accepting the full reality of limited and delayed rescue operations, and make them aware of the entire circumstances that the teams are facing. Once they calm down, I will let them know about the damage to supply routes and incessant rains which are hampering the rescue efforts. Next, I will request them for cooperation so that we can begin our rescue work at the earliest, because without their cooperation and support, we cannot do anything to help them. At the same time, I will sensitize my team to the distressing situation that the locals are going through and ask them to be patient as taught in their training, right? I'll ask them to put themselves in their shoes and to empathize with them in what they are undergoing. I will remind them of their prime duty towards the most vulnerable, elderly, disabled, women and children, and motivate them to begin the operations. Since damage to the supply route is what is delaying the rescue operations, I will take the help of youth in the locals to rebuild a temporary route or try to repair it so that help can reach us as quickly as possible. Finally, I will try to connect to the headquarters to apprise them of the situation and seek help, right? So this is going to be my response in this particular situation. As you can see, I have tried to address each and every point mentioned in the question and tried to come up with solutions for the same, right? So for team members, I have suggested something. For locals, I have suggested something. For the damaged supply routes, I have suggested something. And what else can be done also by asking for further help, right? So the second part of question 1 asks us to identify the qualities of a public servant which will be useful in this particular situation. So you can take every instance that is happening and try to identify a quality that can help you deal with that situation. So point number 1 is being calm in the face of adversity. So a lot of things are happening. There is a natural calamity and locals are against us. Our team members are scared. So first of all, in this adverse situation, you have to be extremely calm. Secondly, presence of mind to ensure safety of the rescue team. You immediately have to escort your rescue team to a safe place so that they themselves are not injured, right? Safety is utmost and it is of utmost importance. Next, resourcefulness to arrange for medical aid in scarcity of resources. So if there is a doctor nearby, you need to convince him, you need to remind him of his medical ethics and values and ask him to take care or to attend to your team members. Emotional intelligence. To manage your own emotions, you must be feeling scared, alone, distressed. The tempers are high and you might be feeling very anxious about the entire situation, right? As well as your apprehensions of team members. So you need to manage the locals, team members, as well as yourself. The emotional intelligence comes into play over here. Empathy in understanding the plight of locals who have just lost their everything. So you need to have both sympathy and empathy, right? Next, interpersonal skills to pacify and persuade the locals to cooperate with the rescue team. How you communicate with the locals is of utmost importance over here because you need their cooperation and support. They will have a better idea of the local circumstances, the topography, who are the most vulnerable people. They are the local intelligence, so they will form the base of your rescue operations, right? So interpersonal skills are important. Leadership skills to manage your own rescue team members, to motivate them, to keep their morale high, to pacify them that they are going to be safe, and to help them organize all the rescue operations. Being resilient in hardship. A never give up attitude. Ability to take quick decisions because time is of utmost importance over here. Time is of the essence. You need to take urgent action so that the damage to life and property can be minimized. So the stakes are extremely high and you need to be able to take good decisions. Strong work ethic to stay dedicated to the cause at hand and ensure rescue for the vulnerable. So I have made a short list of useful keywords for disaster management cases. This is just an indicative list. It is not comprehensive, and you can make your own additions or deletions from this particular list depending on your comfort level. So, for instance, before the disaster strikes, you need to take certain steps which are pre-disaster risk management for prevention, mitigation of the disaster, and to be prepared, right? So a few keywords that you can use here are hazard and vulnerability assessment. What are the risks involved if a particular area is struck by a particular disaster? So, and how many people are vulnerable? What is the property that is vulnerable? For instance, if it is a coastal location, then the coastal, which constructions on the coastal zone are vulnerable to be damaged by that particular disaster. So things like this, strengthening safety norms and construction rules of whatever constructions or buildings or whatever structures are being built in the disaster prone area. Disaster risk reduction to enhance resilience in all development projects. This is basically to internalize disaster risk reduction processes or strategies or policies in while constructing the development projects, so that it can be taken care of only at the preparation stage and not as an afterthought later after the construction has been done. Mitigation, so prediction and early warning systems can contribute to mitigation or reducing the impact of the disaster. And multi-channel communication, immediately as you get to know that uh, uh, let's say a cyclone is coming, then you alert people by SMS, email, news alerts, radio broadcasts, however you can, and this should be a multi-channel communication to be more effective. Preparedness. For preparedness, you need to run awareness campaigns during peacetime so that people are aware of what to do in case disaster strikes, right? For instance, in Japan, there are mock drills for earthquakes. Basically, they make the public aware on how to behave when an earthquake actually occurs. And if you see, the public behaves very, very calmly, and they form a line and walk out of their offices in Japan. So things like these are behavioral modifications which take a longer amount of time to bear fruit, and this should be done through awareness campaigns. There should be disaster management plans at community levels, district level, also state level, country level. So disaster management plans should incorporate all sorts of preparedness, mitigation, prevention activities which should be done. Risk cover, impact assessment, basically an impact assessment of disasters. Let's say Delhi is being touted as one of the places where a huge earthquake is supposed to come, and for preparedness we can undertake a disaster impact assessment of Delhi region so that we can be prepared accordingly. Risk zoning. In post disaster crisis management, the first thing that has to be done immediately is emergency response. Who are the people who will be responsible for coordinating the relief and rescue operations immediately after disaster has struck? And what would be the phases of emergency response? You cannot sit and decide after disaster has struck on who are the people who will be going, where the resources will be sourced from. So you need to take action immediately after the disaster has happened. Relief work has to be planned out, and resources have to be immediately mobilized so that proper relief can be given. Physical, social, economic, and psychological rehabilitation of people who have been displaced due to disasters and who have lost their homes or who have lost their livelihoods or lost their near and dear ones. So there should be support, medical aid, as well as rehabilitation processes by the government. and you need to operationalize these beforehand and think about how you will go about doing this. Reconstruction of the lost infrastructure, and recovery and build back better. So basically, slowly and gradually, the area should progress towards having a normalized life all over again, and build back better by including more resilient structures and incorporating all construction norms and everything. Laws and institutional framework, you can use these in your disaster management case studies if required. So, National Disaster Management Act 2005 is the main law dealing with disasters in India. National Disaster Management Authority is mandated at the national level to take steps in case of national level disaster. State Disaster Management Authority is there for the states. District Disaster Management Authority looks after the preparedness in cases of disaster in a district. This helps to localize the disaster management response. And the primary responsibility for disaster management is the state government. However, they can take the help of National Disaster Management Authority. There's a National Disaster Response Force for quick and effective response actions in case of disasters. National Institute of Disaster Management undertakes research activities to find out the ways in which we can prevent disasters. Directorate General of Fire Services handles the fire brigades and other firefighting teams. Home guards, civil defense is an important part where volunteers are there and they can be used in immediate rescue operations because they live in the same area and it takes time for security personnel or NDRF or SDRF forces to reach the particular area where disaster has struck. So civil defense can be trained for this. Armed forces in case of remote areas or hilly regions or Naxalite areas where the normal civil defense or NDRF is facing obstacles, armed forces can be brought in. National Disaster Response Fund and State Disaster Response Fund are funds which can be used for financing the relief and rescue operations as well as rehabilitation after the consequences of the disaster are known. So first point of response, as I said, you can use civil defense. Then local authorities would be the first point. Panchayati Raj institutions, which would be living in the same area, they can immediately start coordinating rescue and relief operations. Municipalities, in case of towns and municipal corporations, you have town planning authorities, district and cantonment boards as well. Their functions would be to control and manage the civic services, the basic services, try to find out and arrange for basics of shelter, food, clothing, etc. So, because these institutions or authorities are performing an extremely important function of managing disasters, uh, a lot needs to be done and finances need to be invested in their capacity building so that they are aware of what they are supposed to do in such situations. Mock drills should be undertaken, relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction activities. There should be a roadmap of all of these, which can be immediately executed and implemented by the local authorities, and prepare disaster management plans right from prediction and early warning to the final stages of building back better. Now we move to case study 2. The Ebola outbreak in Nigeria has affected thousands of people in a short span of time and infected many others. There is no vaccine or treatment available to cure the disease. You are the head of the health department of one of the countries that have been severely hit by the pandemic. While there is no treatment currently available for the disease, an experimental drug is being used in some other country. This drug has shown positive results and consequently some of the patients have also managed to recover from the disease. However, it is not yet clear whether the relief came due to the drug alone or otherwise. Given the high mortality rate of the disease and its rapid spread, other countries affected by this disease have already given a go-ahead for the mass production of this experimental drug. But some health experts are skeptical about the efficacy of the drug and have even warned against its use, as it may result in some deadly side effects. So, question 1 is bring out the ethical issues in and discuss the above case. Question 2 of this particular case study is what would you do in the above situation? Give reasons, right? So there's an Ebola outbreak in Nigeria. I'm sure all of you must be aware about the Ebola outbreak. It has affected thousands of people in a very short span of time. It is a rapidly spreading disease. There is no vaccine or treatment available. You are the head of the health department of one of the countries, and an experimental drug is being used in a different country. It has shown some positive results and some patients have recovered from the disease, but it is not very clear whether the relief is due to the disease, due to the drug, or due to some other factors. Now, this disease has a high mortality rate, it is rapidly spreading, and other countries have given a go-ahead for mass production of this experimental drug in light of the fact that there are no other treatments available. But some health experts are skeptical about the efficacy of the drug, and they have also warned against its use as it may result in some deadly side effects, right? So, moving on to the analysis. You are in an epidemic situation. It is affecting a lot of people. High mortality rate is there. The disease is rapidly spreading. No treatment or vaccine is available. Experimental drug is there whose efficacy has not been tested till now, and other countries are still going ahead for mass production, but this may result in deadly side effects, right? Coming to the ethical issues and how you are going to discuss what are the issues of importance in this particular case. So, issue number 1 is whether to experiment with the drug or wait till its scientific validity is proven, right? So, this is something which can easily come in your COVID case study as well. If such a question comes up, you can go through this particular case study and you'll understand how to tackle the COVID related case study as well. So in this case, if we experiment with the drug, what are we risking? Might affect the target patient with unknown side effects, right? These side effects might be even deadlier than the effects of the disease itself. Maybe the disease could cure, maybe the person could survive, right? But what if we give this drug and it leads to further worsening of the situation or of the health of the patient? But if we wait till the scientific validity is proven, it is a case of not acting and watching the rapidly spreading infection and letting thousands of people die, right? There's no other option that is available as of now. And if we wait till the scientific validity is proven, we are kind of foregoing the opportunity to try something which might be working in other countries, right? This is one ethical issue. Second is who should receive the drugs first. So should we give it to the frontline workers? Should we give it to the most vulnerable people, to high risk cases who have very less chances of survival as a medicine of last resort? Or should we administer it to mild cases first so that any side effects can be handled, right? So we really don't know who should receive the drugs first, and this is a major ethical question. Even in case of the coronavirus vaccination, uh, 45 plus age group was given vaccination first, and this was decided because the complications in that particular age group were leading to a lot of deaths and increasing the mortality rates, right? So it depends on who is the most vulnerable or what are the policy priorities that are there in the particular circumstance. Next ethical dilemma is who should weigh the risks and benefits of these drugs. Should it be the producer company who is producing, but he might be biased, right? Should it be the medical fraternity? The medical fraternity might take a stand which is in its own interest. Or should hardcore data and evidence of patient survival rate decide whether the drugs should be used, or should it be the government of the concerned country? Right? So this is another ethical dilemma as to whose opinion would you take in deciding that this drug should be introduced or not. Next ethical dilemma is what would be the potential side effects and how will it be managed in the country, especially provided that Nigeria is an underdeveloped country and the population is vulnerable both financially and health-wise. There is not much social protection available in the country, and the health infrastructure is also crumbling and very deficient. So how will the side effects be managed in such a case? Next, is it prudent to call for mass production considering the rapid spread and high mortality rate? Should you be calling for mass production at this stage, or should you wait for more clinical trials to occur? If the drug does not prove to be efficacious in other countries, uh, if the drug does prove to be efficacious in other countries, will Nigeria be able to ramp up mass production in a short span of time to protect our population? Or should we enter into some buying arrangements so that it can be ramped up in a short span of time, right? So that a lot of our population does not have to forego the benefits of the drug available due to non-availability in Nigeria itself, right? Is it morally correct to deny the right of a patient or his family to decide whether to take the experimental drug or not? Let's say every case is different and a blanket national decision on whether to administer the drug or not might go against the wishes of a patient's family who might want to resort to giving that experimental drug to the patient in a last bid effort to ensure that the patient recovers, right? To ensure his survival. So, is it ethically correct to deny this right to that patient or his family? And finally, what about the affordability of the drugs? So, since this is an experimental drug, if it is not available in Nigeria, some people might have to import it. So the poor people and who do not have means to access this medicine, they might be left out and they might have a problem in accessing this particular drug in times of need. Right, so all these are ethical dimensions which we have to discuss before we take a concrete decision on what should be done. Next part of the question is, what would you do, right? So I am the head of the health department of the country, and since there is no vaccine or treatment in sight of instead of mass production, what I can do is take the middle path and I'll approve the usage of the experimental drug in severe cases where chances of survival are bleak, so that a last ditch effort can be made to save the particular patient, right? Next, I will also call for research to study cases where patients have recovered after usage of the experimental drug in other countries. And the objective would be to ascertain whether the drug is responsible for recovery or not. So instead of waiting for the other countries to do their own research, I will myself initiate this. I will try to send my own team to study the effects of the experimental drug, right? In addition to the benefits of the experimental drug, I will also commission studies to understand the potential side effects of using the drug, right? So, if we are able to study the patients and follow up with them after they have recovered and see if they are developing any side effects, that will also be very useful for us. Next, instead of waiting to see the research of health experts, I will simultaneously arrange for clinical trials to begin as soon as possible in my country, right? Clinical trials might also be expedited in a crisis like situation. For instance, in coronavirus vaccine, it was kind of expedited. right? Next, I will call for collaboration and data sharing among countries' medical fraternities to find a solution for the disastrous situation. So, collaboration and data sharing and resource sharing is going to be very helpful, and it will help the different countries discuss the different strains that might be emerging in the Ebola virus, right? And how to tackle the same and what is helping where. So whatever experience sharing can be done will be helpful for people or the medical professionals from different countries to tackle the situation. Based on the data from the countries which are going for mass production, if results are encouraging, I will begin phased mass production in my own country, right? So mass production might not be able to ramp up immediately, but it can be phased. So the usage of these drugs will be prioritized for high risk cases, and I will also arrange for follow up in these cases so that any side effects can be identified early and treatment can be started, right? So complete monitoring of the patient would be required. And finally, I will also make buying agreements with other countries, as already mentioned, so that supplies of any medicines produced or treatments or vaccines discovered can be ensured. So we have come to the end of the earlier case studies, and now this is a practice case study that you should be practicing in the disaster management category. So you can pause the video or take a screenshot of this particular case study, and you can get it evaluated by Sunya IAS. So this case study is about a flood prone district. You are the district magistrate. The flood control department has allocated 40 crore rupees for building embankments in the low lying area of the riverbed. Um, and there have been complaints from locals over the delay in project completion, violation of rules, misuse of funds by nexus of politicians and contractors. So during monsoon, the embankment construction could not withstand a single season of flooding. This has led to submergence of a lot of villages in floodwater, and thousands of people are trapped in the villages, which are completely cut off, and there is scarcity of food and drinking water. Due to water stagnation, there is also a risk of epidemic spread in the region. So flooding is a topic which is most of the times in news every year, especially in the northeast and these days even in the major cities like Chennai. So do practice this case study properly. There's huge discontent and protest over the allegation of corruption against a local politician. He is a popular face of ruling political party in the state, and there is severe pressure from political heads to cover the corruption issue. So there is a corruption dimension as well over here. And this is a classic example of a UPSC type of case study because they combine multiple issues. So you have to think from multiple dimensions. It cannot just be one disaster management case study. It can include other aspects like administrative, corporate governance, environmental norms, etc. So this is a good case study to practice such complex questions asked. Defying the orders of political bosses will bring wrath towards you and may also lead to transfer. Now here you have to see what are the ethical issues that you will be facing, right? As a district magistrate, what will be your course of action to manage the situation in the district? So the first question relates to what will be your course of action to manage the situation, right? Next is identify the various dimensions of the crisis involved in the issue. Please don't restrict yourself to only the ethical portion, right? The other dimensions of how to uh, ensure accessibility to the villages which are trapped and how to ensure resources reach the correct people, the vulnerable receive aids. These are organizational issues, but these should also be mentioned over here. Based on your understanding, suggest measures to deal with the crisis. Right, so moving on to the next case study. The second one is another practice case study. This is a little different. So just go through it and take a screenshot, pause the video, and try to attempt the same. For evaluation, again, you can get it done by Sunya IAS. You have been appointed as a chief advisor to the Prime Minister. The country has recently seen droughts in many states of southern India. In contrast, western disturbances have caused heavy rains in northern India, leading to destruction of rabi crop. Demand of compensation is there from many sectors, thus putting extra pressure on the limited resources of the government, right? So in this context, India's neighboring country Nepal has been wrecked by a deadly earthquake of high intensity, leading to avalanches, landslides, aftershocks, and lots of destruction and death. Nepal has asked for help and assistance from all quarters, and India, being a friendly nation, is expected to respond first. The Prime Minister is in the state of confusion as resources are limited and domestic conditions are not very favorable. He has asked you for your advice in this matter. Explain the situation and the advice which you will give to the PM with reasons. Right, so here you will need to explain the entire situation and why you are giving a particular advice to the Prime Minister. Right, so this is another question which is very different, and one of the lines of opinion that you can take is that no matter whether it is the domestic population or someone living in a different country, uh, this is a humanitarian crisis. All of us are humans like in the first instance, and regions or whatever demarcations of borders are there, that comes later, right? So you can justify giving aid to Nepal as well as much as possible on humanitarian grounds, and or you can also see what other combinations can be taken so that even Nepal can be helped as well as the domestic population in India, right? So thank you so much for watching this particular video. I hope it helped you, and it helped you clarify your doubts on how to approach particular case studies, and it added value to your preparation efforts.